That picture or video?
It's a picture. You gotta put your hand up.
Okay, I was in the right spot.
Yeah, you should put your hand up and I'll follow you.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. Good morning. How are you? Excellent, excellent. Get rid of my tripping hazard. And if, let me put my phone on vibrate, so you guys don't hear my phone ringing.
You take audio was at the one?
Huh?
They were initially at the one. Do you think that's right? Yeah.
Is that what it says on the,
We just got an update yesterday from 10 to 12.
Oh, okay. So
No,
you see
that's
that?
no, yesterday, I think it was 11 to 1.
You know what? Okay. Speak for yourself. Okay. So I think we have two.
Most important ones here.
Exactly. Give me a second.
I don't know about title, but I'm here. Oh, Jeremy, ever invited you to take one? So I'm going to there. This is by. He went to take kickball with them. Okay.
Yeah.
She was 54, but this is not. He fell.
Because Jerry's gone, next time, told me, yeah, probably won't be able to.
No, he is sick because I talked to him too. Yeah, he sounds horrible. But
The radio, I mean, the internet. So I'll leave you on this one.
Jerry's trying to take out the competition. He's trying to take out the competition.
Yeah, there it is. Oh, 10:08 already? All right, we'll be up on, one, two, three. All right, we're slowly gonna start, and I'm hoping by midway, maybe some people will join at 11:00. Thank you for showing up. It's interesting, got two students and four other people here. All right. Three staff, three students. Huh? I said three staff, three students. Yeah. Oh. Three staff, four staff, two students. So, yeah. Okay. 37 in attendance, that's great. All right, shall we? Yes. All right. As far as, what, a lot of times, what I noticed, there's a lot of confusion as who does what, and as you enter an escrow, I noticed that there are questions from the seller, there are questions from the buyer, and there's gonna be a lot of documents that are gonna be transacted in between the process. So that's why I created this class to just give you an overall view of how the process works from even before you open escrow till the day you close escrow and hand over the keys. So we have some things for you, some hands out. If I can figure out To give you some hands out. The first page is the one that starts with the pre-approval. So what I have created, assuming an escrow is 30 days, and most escrows are 30 days. What I have done, I created a calendar in 30 days. Uh, so just for you to get a sense how, what is it that, if you never have done it, and it's gonna be, oh, what I do now, what is it that, happening right now? So, two things that I'm gonna be providing you. One is this chart, and the second is who gets what documents. And then I'm gonna ask Laura to also print the list of the documents that we the documents that we interexchange with the listing agent and the selling agent, and what are the documents that we exchange with escrow, because some of the disclosures you're not gonna share with escrow. Escrow doesn't care about some of the disclosures that are gonna be transacted between the buyer and seller, right? So not every document gonna go to escrow. Escrow officer doesn't need to see a lot of, for example, if there's a mode disclosure, if a lead disclosure, if it's a TDS, or any of those, most of these documents is the purpose acknowledgement between the buyer and the seller, and escrow does not need to know that. So I'm gonna have Laura, I already printed a form, and I'm gonna go over that shortly as
They don't
well
like it,
too.
Joe. They all sit in the back.
Huh?
They don't like to stay, they'll sit there and clap.
So, to start with, I'm gonna start a little bit, and then I'm gonna bring our wonderful goalie, our escrow officer, to talk about actual escrow. But let me start a little bit, and then I pause and I want her to come and comment. So you're writing an offer. So you know what? You go through the process. There is the purchase contract. There is the counter offers, right? So you do all the back and forth. Finally, the buyer and seller agree, and they both sign all the documents, both the RPA and all the counters, and make sure, because a lot of times we send an RPA and we get only a counter back, and we don't get the RPA signed by the seller. So make sure that you get all documents signed, and make a habit that before. And then usually it's the listing agent that opens escrow, because a lot of times it's seller's choice of escrow. So you know what, since already the listing agent has a relationship with the escrow company, probably would be the one that would contact. What escrow needs at the beginning, it's an executed contract. And not only the purchase contract, but also any addendum or any counter. Just remember, if you just enter just the purchase contract, and there has been seller counter offer, buyer counter offer, and the price change, because on the original purchase contract, you know what, the buyer offered a low price, right? And then the seller said, oh no, I'm not accepting it, higher price, and they gone back and forth. So escrow the escrow officer will not know what was the final offer, the final terms. So it's not always only the price, there are other terms. How long is the escrow? How long is the contingency? All that. So the escrow officer needs to know that, and the only way is to make sure that you provide all the counter offers along with the purchase contract to the escrow officer. So if you usually, and it's the listing agent that will provide. But besides that, that's not the only person that you need to inform as soon as your offer gets accepted. Who else should you inform and provide the documents to as soon as your offer gets accepted? Your loan officer. So he can right away start working on that. So it's a good, as much as the listing agent has to provide the contracts to the escrow officer, the selling agent, who is the buyer's agent and has an ongoing relationship with the lender, with the loan officer, right away provide that. So, because one thing that you have to understand, time is of the essence, and all the contingencies starts from the date that the contract was executed, not from the date that escrow was open. So one of the things that you have to understand, so it's not, well, we signed the documents on Friday, but escrow was open on Monday. Make sense? So your timeline doesn't start Monday. Your timeline, the buyer's timeline, the buyer's contingencies start as of Friday, not Monday. So that's why it's essential for you to not lose a minute right away as the offer gets accepted, provided to the loan officer, so you can right away start working on it. And you usually have three contingencies. You have the due diligence contingency, which would include the inspection. You have the appraisal, and you have loan. So out of the three contingencies that you have, two of them related to the loan officer. That's why it's important for you guys to let the loan officer know, so they can work on it. And the livelihood of your escrow depends on the loan. So if the loan gets screwed up, you know what? You wasted the whole thing. So that's why it's important to have a clear communication with the loan officer, and you provide them the documents so they can work on it right away. Make sense so far? All right. Now, even before, so as you see that your offer is getting accepted, you should already know of an inspection company. Again, you don't want to waste any time. So you know what? The minute your offer gets accepted, you should be able to provide the buyer with some names of inspectors, usually 3, right? Why we do that?
So they choose, right?
They choose, and why we do that?
To protect ourselves.
For protecting ourselves. So in case they choose one and it ends up that the inspector didn't do the right job, we always want some, we provide you 3, but you picked the wrong one. So it's a joke, but you know what? But you know what, just in case, so you don't want to say, well, this is the person I work with, go do your inspection with this person, because if anything goes wrong, I had an inspection done, not me, a colleague of mine that I work with, she's not even in this office, but I work with her. She had an inspection done, and the guy's wife, the inspector's wife, was giving birth or something. So he was in a rush to do the inspection and leave. So after the awards, I'm looking at the inspection and I revisit the property, and I noticed that he was so much in rush that there was a lot of stuff that he was a good inspector, just that at that day he had, he was doing it as a favor. So he did the inspection, and then we noticed that he missed a lot of stuff just for, and it was one of those really, and then I spoke with the owner, because I worked with the owner for 20 years. So I called him and said, listen, so-and-so, your inspector messed up. And says, Joe, I apologize, but his wife was doing birth, and then they almost lost the baby. That's why he was just trying to get it. So, you know what, with that in mind, just make sure you provide 3 different inspectors, so in case anything goes wrong, the liability. And it's not only inspector, a termite company, or whatever, it's a good idea for you guys to create a vendor list, not 1, 3. So you should know, what, who's gonna be your termite guy, who's gonna be your mold guy, who's gonna be the inspector. There's, these 3, the inspector and the termite company, and sometimes swarm line inspectors. So there are certain things that we see on and off. I've had a brand new construction a couple of years ago on the market, and the buyer decided to do a full inspection, including sewer line, chimney on a brand new fireplace, and foundation, they do mold, they did the whole 9 yards because the bar was very, funny enough, there were some issues with the store line. Funny enough, the fireplace was not, when the person put a camera into the brand new fireplace, there was some stuff that they were not connected properly. So when the guy put the camera all the way going out, so he noticed some faults there. So you're always gonna recommend your client to do whatever inspection they need to do. And don't assume just because it's a brand new construction, they should not be doing any of those inspections. So always make sure that you have those contact, those vendors ready to go. So when you open escrow, you're not trying to run around, find a inspector or a termite guy. So it's a good idea for you guys to start creating that. Make sense so far? All right. So going down the list. Can I have you print the checklist?
Yeah.
Yes.
You just want this one?
No, mine.
Oh.
I put it. All right, so that's some of the stuff that, even things that you should do even before, now I was talking about the selling agent, the buyer. Now, on the listing side, if you, so you know what, I'm assuming prior to opening escrow, sometimes between the date that the listing was signed and the time that we are in negotiation, that you have provided the seller with a copy of the transfer disclosure and the seller property questionnaire, TDS and SBQ. All right, those two, you know what? I always provide those to the seller to give them ample time to complete this, because there's a lot of questions. And one of the questions might be, have you had an insurance claim? And what's the claim number? And when was it? When you give them ample time to have them review and read all those documents, you know what? Then if it's ready and the day you open escrow, you are able to provide the buyer with the disclosure without wasting any time. Just remember, let's say you have a 7-day due diligence contingency. Remember, the day that you provide disclosures, the buyer has 5 days to review. So let's say you open escrow and then you remember, oh, let me give the seller the TDS and SBQ to complete. You give the seller on the 3rd day and takes them 2 days. So that's 5 days before the seller gives that back to you. On the 5th day, you give it to the buyer. Guess what? Timeline starts from the time that you give it to the buyer. So now the buyer does not have 7 days contingency. He has 10 days because you give it on the 5th day plus 5 days that by law per contract, they have the timeline to review. And this is, it might work to your disadvantage. Why? You're giving a loophole, you're giving extra time for the buyer to be able to get out of the transaction.
How long does a seller have time to do that TDS again?
You know what? My rule of thumb is when you sign a contract, listing contract, at one point, if not on the same day, the next day, the next few days, provide them a copy of the TDS and have them complete those.
Right, when you do the listing.
After you get the listing at one point, you have ample time to review. Make sense?
So you can send it to the buyer.
Yeah, and then you know what, as a listing agent, you should also have, know what's going on with the listing. Know, if it's a trust, be prepared. Let the seller know, or maybe you're gonna communicate with your escrow officer. Say, you know what, that's why if you already have a relationship with an escrow company like Rolling, and with her ample experience, and she's gonna come up and talk in a minute, you know what, there are certain information that you're gonna need from the seller. One of those gonna be probably, and the escrow officer would provide it, ask him anyways, but you know what, probably one of those questions that the seller needs to provide if they have a mortgage and maybe copy of their bank statement or whatever, and Golly gonna, expand on that. But there are certain things, if you want to get the ball rolling really fast and help out your escrow officer and your title and all that, there are certain things that as a listing agent, if you know what's going on, if this is a trust, and I'm assuming you already worked everything out when the day you signed the listing contract, so you know who is involved, who's signing the listing contract, so so all those were verified. But at the same time, probably escrow gonna ask the seller for verification of the trust, who, maybe for the original contract. So there's things that probably is gonna come from the escrow company, from the escrow officer, but there are things that as you have more knowledge about, it makes you more experienced. So when you're having a conversation with the seller, it makes it a little bit more, knowledgeable. Yes, do you know what you're doing? So on the listing side, so the disclosures, and you should have already, and one of the things, let me quickly go back because that's essential. On the contracts, make sure that, if you're the listing agent, all those things sorted out, who's title, who's escrow, all that is sorted out and what have you. Nevertheless, always, a lot of times I ask my title rep to provide me a prelim, a sub-prelim. Why? Because for the title, a lot of times we go to the MLS, we go to property, public record, and we try to pull out a title. Sometimes the title information that we get off of MLS is not up to date. So in essence, if you are in escrow, already have the listing and all that, and ask your title rep to see if they can get you kind of a prelim, a title information, an a little up-to-date title report, you can see if there are any liens, and then hopefully our title guy will come and can expand on that. The name, because sometimes 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe the seller changed from their name into a trust and you were not able to see it. So always it's a good idea that you kind of a cross-reference with a prelim, so you know for a fact all the information that originally you had are valid and nothing has changed. Make sense so far? So that's some of the stuff I just want you to quickly know. Now, going down, so if you're all on the first page, line 1.
Can I get one?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes.
Page 1. And then below it. All right, so if you look on line 1, it says pre-approval, proof of funds. So these are just basic stuff that you need with your offer. Then you have the you write the offer, counter offers. And then you go down, and then I also mentioned on the 4th line the TDS and the SPQ. So all of this has been already done. Then you are looking at opening escrow.
What's the difference between the colors?
I will tell you that. You know what? If you look at the default contingency on your RPA for inspection is 17 days. If you look at the yellow line, 17 day, we have one contingency that as the default on the purchase contract is on the 17th day. And you have like the loan, which is on the 21st day. So if you look on the top, we are assuming, because that's the most common timeline for escrow is 30 days. So, and then the default for the inspections is 17 days, and for loans 21 days. So just to give you a outline where your deadline is, I just put a yellow line so you get an idea where you are into the escrow.
Red.
Red, okay. Red, it means it's very important. That's why it's red.
And the base,
Okay, well, you know what, I slowly but surely. Um, you know what, some of the things that I put X's on, like the orange one, these are things that it's day by day. It's a day by day that you have to follow up. Things that I want you to pay attention to. So we're gonna get there. So when we get there, we talk about the color, you know. So we go step by step.
Not put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, exactly.
SNL means seller and listening.
Yeah. Selling agent and listing agent.
together.
Yeah, okay. So you know what, when I'm talking about the TDS and SPQ, I'm talking about the listing agent. When I'm talking about open escrow, it's a listing agent that is doing it. So on the second line, I'm telling you who is responsible to do what. And then the S and the L is S for the selling agent and L for the listing agent.
Now, keep in mind that not all agents are good agents. So just because it may be the opposite
true.
party who's responsible for something on this list, that doesn't mean they're gonna get it done or properly or at all, or within the time frame. But you have an obligation to your client, so sometimes you gotta do their job too. It's just,
So selling agent, listing, isn't that the same person? No. Selling agent was a buyer's agent. Oh, listing agent. The buyer, okay.
You know, and I explain why. Listing agent gets a listing
Yeah,
and the selling agent helps the listing agent to sell the price.
basically, so.
I would buy the buyer's agent.
You know what, but that's not the right terminology. And,
Yeah.
and this is something that if you attended my purchase contract and listing, I always tell you, that's the common mistake that new agents make. That, you know what, selling agent is a buyer agent, so watch the video and you see the first thing in the class that I tell you, buyer agent and selling agent is the same thing. So, you know what, watch the video from, yeah. And this is common, you're not the first. I did that all day long. And that's why I mentioned every class. I said buyer agent, selling agent is the same. Listing agent is the one representing the seller.
Retrofitting is a mandatory thing.
We talk about that later. You jumping,
Yeah.
let's not jump ahead
Walk the path.
because we're gonna waste time and I really don't wanna have another 3-hour class. So let's keep the timeline going. All right, so you know what, one of the other things that I mentioned is wiring scam disclosure. I put it on day one. One of the things that I wanna make sure that you have a communication with the buyer, because the buyer has to wire their initial deposit to escrow. So we just wanna make sure, even though that there's a disclosure attached to the purchase contract, let the buyer know how is it that they are going to wire money to escrow company. Now, first of all, they certainly have to be in communication with the escrow company, right? Second of all, just let them know how the scams work. So let them know that sometimes the email that comes from the escrow company can be intercepted by hackers, and they can change just tweak one number or one thing, and then all of a sudden, their $30,000 of money, initial money, can go to somebody in Nigeria. So to avoid that, they have to have a phone conversation with our wonderful escrow officer, Goalie. So have her, or, you know, and if it's our Goalie or whoever the escrow company is, do not trust or depend on email communication. Now, what escrow companies have done, they created, you know, different means of communicating, encrypting it, or what other means to make sure that it does not get intercepted by hackers. But nevertheless, the way I tell my client, I said, the moment you go to the bank to wire the money, pick up the phone, call the wonderful escrow officer, say, listen, I'm in the bank. Can I verify the routing number? Can I verify the account number? Can I verify the name? And make sure it corresponds to the email that you got or to any document that you got. Do not, randomly just go to the bank, say, okay, I got this email, I'm gonna just, send my 30 grand or 40 grand or whatever to Nigeria.
So the buyer calls the escrow
Yeah,
and then they verify,
they verify.
even if it's on a weekend,
You can't send a wire out.
no, you can't send a wire.
We don't recommend you, well,
If you go.
you can send it up, but you know what, we don't recommend, it's not recommended.
It doesn't make sense to, because it's not gonna go anywhere Saturday or Sunday.
All right,
So just
let me tell you,
wait.
if my client's gonna say I'm gonna wire it on a weekend, I'm gonna let them know that call on Friday and get all the information on the phone from the thing, but always remember, when you open escrow, well, no, let me go back. When the offer gets executed, meaning whenever the word execution means that it was signed by both parties, the buyer and the seller. That's where the timeline started. The buyer has 3 business days to deposit, and meaning that if the offer was signed by both parties on Friday, Saturday, Sunday doesn't count. And in your contract, in your purchase contract, as we spoke about it before, one of the only times that we don't account or don't count for the weekend is for the initial deposit. And you have 3 days to deposit. If the buyer fails to deposit, then there's an issue. But when you open an escrow on Friday, or not open, when the offer was signed and executed on Friday, they have till Wednesday to do the wire. So it's not Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then oops, too late. That's the only time that when we are counting timeline, we don't account for Saturday time. But nevertheless, remember, all your contingencies start together at this all from the day that the buyer and seller have signed the contract. Yes,
When you open escrow, do you show the property anymore?
of course. Why not?
Because someone has an offer, but they're looking for a backup offer, that one?
There are instances that there are, again, just like the contract, that everything is negotiable. I've had situation that the listing agent or the selling agent negotiated and say, listen, I don't want this to be on the market anymore. I don't want the seller to show this, that. There were times that certain things were negotiated, so it depends on the negotiation, but what I've seen or myself, I was in escrow and I would still do open houses. So,
Yeah.
What's the percentage, would you say, of escrows falling out after you open? It's higher now, right? Like 10, 15%?
30.
Right now,
Yeah.
no, right now, actually, maybe 1 out of every 10 deals.
So like 10%.
And then we get the backup offer right away.
Right.
I just had a house that went out of escrow, fell out of escrow. They had 15 backup offers.
Yeah.
So we opened up the problem.
So that's a reason to continue to
You
show
always
the
wanna
house,
keep it, yeah.
because you never know.
It's good. All right, next item. Give lender a copy of, so if you look, one by one, things that I mentioned, again, if you go down the line, next line.
Sorry, can we go back a couple steps here?
Yeah, which one?
Open escrow.
Okay,
Can we explain what open escrow actually means?
you know what? Yeah, you know what? Let Goldie come in. And I think that would be a good takeaway to have a Goldie come in.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming, for all of you that showed up. And we didn't have to bribe you. See, this is really nice. So anyway, opening escrow. The more information you give an escrow officer when you're opening your escrow, the more successful your escrow is going to be. When you guys don't give me pertinent information, that means I have to take the time to chase everybody to get the information, so it delays things. Good agents give me everything up front. So for the listing side, when you're opening,
Go ahead.
please give me the RPA. Give me the commission and the split. Most agents don't do that. I have to keep asking, what's the commission? What's the split? So
That
commission is,
already, oh, that's in the listing.
yeah, but most people don't give me that, or they just give me half an information. So then I have to call again, can you give me this? On a separate email, I need your buyers, your sellers, their name, their, phone number and their email address.
Seller's name,
Yeah,
phone number.
and email address. And then, on the buyer, to the buyer side, then I need your buyer's name, buyer's phone number and their email. Please do not, a lot of people don't give me their phone numbers. It's like, I'm not gonna steal your client. I really need their phone number, so I'm not sharing that with anyone. Because what we do is I call them to personalize it. Especially when you have a buyer that's new or a seller that's, this is the first time they're selling their home, they need their hands held. And when they get a phone call from the escrow officer that says, hey, I'm your escrow officer, I just called to let you know that first, congratulations. And here's the timeline. This is what we're gonna do, what you can expect from me. And here's my cell phone number. I always give them my cell phone number. I tell them, call me anytime. If you can't get a hold of your agent, you call me because I don't want you to worry about something when it can be answered right away. Because that puts them at ease, and then they trust you even more. Okay, so those are the information you give me, and then if you like title, I need to know who okay, most agents, when they open an order with me, they give me the title company and the name of their rep. I also need to know what title officer you need to use, because every title company has a bunch of title officers. So who's your preferred title officer? So that way, when I open the file, I can just go directly to that title officer and then give credit to your rep, okay? And then, if, as a
Lender,
your lender information, just an email will do with them. I can always get their phone number. And then, oh gosh, that just went right out of my head. So listing side,
Insurance.
no, hold on one second. The commission split, title of offer, lender,
Rachel.
no, hold on one second. So it was, that just went right out of my
sorry,
head.
I
It's
threw
okay.
lender out.
So it's a lender, and then,
To take title.
no.
Bank
Oh,
statement.
HOA, if there's an HOA involved, I need to know that upfront. Please give me the name of the HOA, the name of the management company, and their phone number. Because on the first day we open escrow, I sent opening emails to the agents. And then what I do is I ordered the natural hazard report that day. I contact your seller and I send them an application for the 9A report for the city of Los Angeles. And I DocuSign that to them, so I need to have their information, so I could do that. And I also ordered HOA docs, it's that everything I order on the first day, all the reports, because 9A reports take between 7 to 10 days to get back.
What was it, sir?
9A reports to the city of Los Angeles.
What is the name?
9A report is a report that we order on behalf of the seller for the buyer. That shows if there are any open permits, it shows if it goes hand in hand with the retrofit. That, the questions are, do you have, low water, shower heads? Do you have water pressure? Do you have, locks on your doors? Do you have, what do you call it? The carbon monoxide and all that stuff. So the report also has, if there are like permits that were not, things that were not permitted or anything that's wrong, they put that on there. Usually, thank God, when we get 9A reports, I look at them, they're usually clear. Sometimes they have things on them, and if they do, I have connections in the Department of Building and Safety, and these guys are amazing. I just email them and say, hey, Can you tell me if this has been taken care of? How can I take care of it? And I get it done for you. So you guys don't, that's extra step that you guys don't have to do.
So like the city does an inspection every year.
It's a
on the property?
building.
Oh, building.
It's a building and safety inspection that they've done, that part.
Well,
might have
when
to-
you in that regard, the reason that you want us to handle this because different cities they have different regulations and the retrofitting, some of the retrofitting that you mentioned, it's pertain in their state, like the smoke detector, carbon monoxide and all that. And then you have like earthquake gas shutoff valve, which is, in LA, it's mandatory, but when you go to West Hollywood or Beverly Hills, it's not mandatory. So, and then the good thing is when you're working with an escrow officer that's well versed, been doing this for a long time, she would know. Then while we are talking about a 9A report or a city report, consider that different cities have different regulation. Like if you go to the city of Bell or Carson or some cities or Long Beach, some of them, they mandate you to do a inspection prior even to putting on the market. So, and then, so there are different rules and regulations that you have to watch out for. Just so, just what, just it's, once you're there, you would know. And escrow company, it's a very good source since through the many years that they've been working, they have a very good idea. Most oftenly, which city, what type of requirements they have.
I'll send Joe, I have a list, a link I can send to Joe and he can email it to all of you. That tells you all the cities and what their requirements are. And it's got the website that you guys can go onto it. And it tells you what the requirements are. Like Santa Monica has a report that costs like something like almost $300 that you have to do. And it takes about 3 weeks to get it. So you guys need to keep these in mind. That's why when you go to, the best thing to do is when you get the listing on the property, is contact your escrow right away and say, hey, can you order, when you get the listing, not when you sell it, when you get the listing, call me. I can get the 9A done. I can get, find out what the cost for the HOA is. So you can prepare your seller for the cost. The city, if there's city reports like Santa Monica, it takes 3 weeks. We can order it now. So by the time we go to closing or when your disclosures come up, it's already done.
And that pertains to like all real estate, so like even single family homes, like
Yeah,
commercial
everything,
properties,
yeah,
anything like that?
yeah.
So can you send that to Laura so she can
Yeah,
blast it to the entire
absolutely.
office?
Yeah,
And then, when they have a seller, right, you sign a listing agreement. We talked to them about getting a net sheet. Is
sure.
that something you can do
Yeah.
for them, and what's that process?
So when you guys go to your listing or when you get your listing, you can let me know that you're going to a listing appointment, let's just say. And call me up and say, hey, Goalie, I'm going to a listing appointment. Can you do a net sheet for me? So then tell me like what price range like you're trying to do. Let's say a house, I get agents contact me, they're doing a house, they want one like for 1.5 million, 1.6 million or 1.55 million.
That's
and then
me, who's saying
Just
three
a range.
different prices,
Yeah.
like.
So just a range of prices so they can see what their cost would be. I add in the commission, the escrow title fees and taxes, transfer taxes, all that. So they can see what their bottom line is. And then I always tell them, if you can get me approximately what their payoff is, I can add that on. If not, they know pretty much how much their payoff is. They can deduct it and see what they're gonna be netting. So it's always a good tool to have.
With the 9A report, you order it and then takes 7 to 10 business days to get it, right?
Yes.
And then does the seller have to sign anything?
There's an application we DocuSign to the seller. And I tell them in there that because the questions they ask, sometimes sellers don't even know. So I tell them, if you don't know something, just put it will be done. And then the retrofitter can take care of it. So they're not gonna get in trouble for it. It's always better to say it will be done than say that it's there and it's not.
So the seller has to sign.
Yeah, that we DocuSign it to them as soon as I get that back. We use our credit card. Our company has a credit card we use. We pay for HOA documents up front. We pay for the 9A report, all the reports, anything we have to do, we pay for it. and then we reimburse the company at the back end. So your client doesn't have to be, but because I used to get credit cards all the time from clients and they would get declined.
And
So
what
then
happens if escrow cancels?
The escrow, the seller has to pay the,
So don't be surprised if, you know what, goal here is going over and beyond doing that. But today, most escrow companies, they don't do that. You know, that's one of the services that she provides that, you know, brings a lot of value. But because of a lot of escrows getting canceled, a lot of escrow companies have stopped paying for those items. The 9A report, the city report, which is $72, or the HOA that could go $700-800, and they always ask the seller for a credit card. So you know what, this is one thing that she's going over and beyond doing it, but what I'm noticing right now, most escrow companies, they don't do that anymore, and they ask for the seller to provide a credit card, just to give you a heads up.
Why are the HOA documents important?
what,
Why are the HOA documents important?
because when you buy, okay, so let's say you're buying a property, you wanna know the rules and regulation. So you know, let's say you're buying it as an investment, you wanna be able to know if you can rent it out or not.
I think that's CCNRs, right?
The CCNRs have it, they also have a rules and regulations that they give you.
And those are two different things?
Yeah, they're two different things. Then they have,
Do you know how they differ? If you-
there's a resale package that they have to put together. And it has the statement of account, which shows you, like, if the seller is delinquent on anything or they owe any money. Then they show you the assessment, which is if there's any future assessment. Let's say they want to fix the roofs on all the buildings. So they get a quote, and everybody has to agree to that. So they have to, let you know before you buy it, if you're gonna
Do
do
you
that.
assume any of the debts that the seller, do you assume any of the debts that the seller had for yourself?
We'll see, that's the thing, that's all negotiable. If there's an assessment coming up, if the seller owes money to the HOA, we pay that, escrow pays that during the process out of their proceeds.
Sure.
So because you guys, when your buyer gets cleared everything, clear title, clear. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, so for you guys to really understand the scope of escrow is like a hub, Grand Central, okay? So escrow basically gonna communicate with the listing agent, with the selling agent, with the buyer, with the seller, with the lender of the buyer, and also on the bank that the seller has an ongoing loan. And then not only that, escrow also gonna look at any liens being, it's a IRS lien or whatever, and then their job is to prorate. So you know what? Let's say you're closing escrow mid-month, and there was a HOA payment due, paid. So one of their escrow company is your accountant. So they do a lot of accounting and proration. So being your property tax, it's gonna be prorated. If it's your HOA dues, it's gonna be prorated. Or if there's any balance, it's gonna be prorated. Moving and move out fees that a HOA company may charge, and remember that the HOA gonna communicate with escrow and let them know all of these things, the accounting side of the HOA company gonna be in communication with escrow. And basically, HOA gonna tell them, hey, listen, these are the fees or money that it's owned by the property owner, and this is what the things that we need to get paid on to release them. So escrow, in essence, is communicating and getting a release from the HOA. Makes sense? So you know what, and that's, I think she can elaborate more on that, but that's just to give you an idea that she's like an accountant and she has to prorate. Because if somebody already paid for the month of July and you're closing mid-month, then she has to deduct it from the buyer and give it to the seller. So to be fair.
And this is just the start of escrow that we're talking about. There's so much you have to do. If you got 3 escrows going at one time, you got all these different parts moving. This is why it's so important to have a good escrow officer on your team so that they take stuff off of your plate. Like something as simple as paying for that report. Now they don't have to call you to call your client to get a credit card, to call back, to get this, to sign, that's one thing off of your plate. That's great for, it's small, but they add up throughout the process. And we don't want to get caught up in the weeds of, like, I've never, outside of a couple instances, never really had to look at an HOA document because it's escrow handles it all. If there's an issue, escrow says this is the issue. Most of the time, there's not an issue, right? Because escrow is going to pay everything off and handle, sign here, do this, do that. So let's be careful not to get caught up in the small details of something you may never even see here with escrow, and just get through this. That's a step you need to know happens. If there's an HOA, you should have got that information from your seller. And as soon as you list the property, and that information you send over to escrow, they'll let you know.
Now, the other thing is there's a timeline. So when your client wastes time, when they're not responding to escrow, they're not providing their credit card information. And escrow, if you're working with an escrow company that they're waiting for a credit card, information from your seller, what happens, it wastes few days. And the escrow package that you receive, the HOA document that you're receiving from the HOA company, it's many pages, right? There's a CCNR, there's a finance, there are a lot of, there are the minutes, there's a huge package, right? And they charge you $600-700. But a lot of times, if you were not to pay and she had to wait for the seller to pay, that would waste. So I had situations that it took 5 days for the seller to provide credit cards because they were confused, they're not communicating with the escrow officer, and that delayed. And what happens? 5 days between escrow, it took that. It takes about 7-8 days for HOA to provide those packages, right? And then once you give it to the buyer, they have 5 days to review it. Add up those days, and you see that what happens. Always remember, the more you prolong the contingencies, the higher chance that the buyer would find something, or something can go wrong. Makes sense?
Anything in the world.
And many things can go wrong.
You got 17 days.
I'm not telling you not to protect your client. And you have to protect them when it's needed, but at the same time, you need to know how things work. Know that when you're requesting HOA docs from the company, it's not overnight. It takes time. When the seller has to provide the credit card, it takes time, and that's the benefit working, for example, with Goldie. She, on the second day, she's already ordering. Second or third day. Or maybe when
Maybe
Well,
they
we
already
do
did
a
a
rush-
deposit at
We
that.
do a rush fee too, so what we do is, I don't care whether seller likes it or not, we don't, I mean, it's not that I don't care, but in the case of a HOA docs, you have to have it right away. So we put the rush fee in there, because most most HOAs charge a rush fee. Let's say you want it within 24 hours, it's extra $300, which we don't do that. But usually it's like 3 days, and it's like $100 or $125. We ask for that because within 3 days, that's a normal timeline, and then they still have time to review it.
And when you build your net sheet, you build that in there already.
We put all that in.
So when you've given your client a net sheet that says this is everything that you're gonna be charged, it's already built in there, so it's not.
And like, if I don't know how much it's going to be, I always guesstimate on the high end. I'll put 800 and then I put estimate. So seller knows that, hey, this is just an estimate, it's not the actual figure. So you do that.
How much is the 980?
The 980 report is $72.76.
And many times I have paid it out of pocket, because that too takes time. Unless you have a
7 to 10
good
days.
escrow, but in your case, how long does it take?
Usually it takes 7 days, they're really good, the city's really good about it. But, sometimes it gets rejected, we send it in, it gets, like, I had a case where I think they had someone new in the city. So what we do is we DocuSign it to to you guys, and I mean, not to you guys, to the seller. And how some DocuSigns, when people sign, it has this thing that goes around the signature. Well, on one of my DocuSigns, it doesn't have that. So we sent it to the seller, he signed it, and it didn't have that. So the agent rejects it, like it took 3 days, they rejected it, then they send it back, so I sent it to them and got a live signature from them. I scanned it, I sent it back, and I get an email, it's rejected because they do not want live signature. So finally, I called the city and I'm like, you know, you guys are like killing me. This report is late and you don't accept DocuSign because it doesn't have this line on it. It's my DocuSign. I'm like, I can send you the receipt that the actual seller signed this. It's not like I'm signing it. And then, and the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, we had someone new. And it got rejected twice. So every time it gets rejected, that's like 3 days added to it. So that's why it's really a good habit. When you guys I'll gladly give you the form. When you go to your listing and you get your listing and they're signing the paperwork, get them to sign the application. And I can order it right away. And that way, if it gets rejected or or things like that come up, we get it done before you go into contract, so it's already done. And 90-day reports are good for 6 months. So let's say you have it and you get cancellation and you get a new buyer, it's still good for 6 months, so.
But you're saying the fee and also maybe the timeline depends on the municipality, right?
No, the fee $72.76.
But you said Santa Monica or some other place.
So, Santa Monica, yeah, like, the Santa Monica's is like $300. City of Beverly Hills, I think theirs is free.
But the like time is more or less. the
Yeah,
same.
time is more like, City of Santa Monica is the most, it's Culver City. They usually take about 3 weeks to get their reports. So you gotta, that's why when you go to the listing, we can get the ball rolling on that. Guess what? You're saving yourself a lot of time and grief. And you know,
On a prelim, I saw somebody had an HOA roof.
mhm.
So you pay that off first.
When we get the HOA, when we get the documents, there's called a statement of demand. It's, and on there, it will say what all the fees the HOA charges. There's always a transfer fee, which is usually like $350, move in and out fee. Then, and if they have like late fees, they'll put on there, these are late, this is from this timeline. We charge all of that to the seller. That's, you know, when you buyers buying it, everything's been paid. There is no delinquency on anything. Taxes, HOA, whatever they have, liens have all been taken
So
care of.
I thought you said you pay for it and then it gets reimbursed.
No, on the ordering the HOA docs usually costs about, depending on
Just
the
the report.
HOA, just to get the HOA documents, which is, you know, the CCNRs, the rules and regulations, all of that. I have a form I'll show you guys. I can get printed for you that shows you what the resale package is and what you're getting, the documents you're gonna get from the HOA.
A lot of those fees, they seem so bogus. You know what I mean?
They are, you know, it really, of anything drives me crazy about this business is that the HOAs are not regulated. They should be, because I had one HOA charge $1,500 for HOA docs, which is
That's
mind
insane.
blowing to me. And then smaller ones that are, self-owned,
But they're
self-managed.
community run, right? Like
Sorry.
that's, they're community run, right? That's like.
Not get caught up in
No,
the
it's
weeds.
not. Yeah, let's, you know what?
Let's not
This
get
is
caught
not
up
the
in the
class.
Okay, all right.
Please do not divert. If you don't have, please do not go there.
We're here all day. I gotta go at 12 o'clock.
I just thought it was fascinating because I don't know, I just hear
Yeah.
like very negative things about each other.
We are short of time. I have to cut it off right there.
No problem.
Okay,
Okay, so on first day, we ordered, like I said, we ordered the 9A, we ordered the NHD, and we ordered the HOA docs. So please, please, please give me all that information when you're opening your escrow. Because I sent an email to the buyer, I sent with the wiring instructions. Our wiring instructions, I do not put our account number on there. I put on there, please contact me at this number to get the account number. And and in my email, I always say, please contact me to verify wiring instructions and get the account number before you send your wire. I had a client, I just have to say this, I had a client that got burned. They sent $2 million cash to escrow. I mean, in wire for $2 million and it got stolen.
Oh,
So when they came to me, they'd already been burned and the escrow company is blaming them. They're, you know, it was a whole big lawsuit. when they came to me, I was like, they're like, she goes, I'm gonna send you $100 first to make sure it goes through.
Yep.
I was like, that's fine, and I never pushed them, I said, I understand exactly how you feel, and go ahead, just send me whatever makes you feel comfortable. So they sent me $100, and then we got it, I let them know, then they sent me the rest of the stuff. So this stuff is not a joke, it happens.
There is a reason that when you're writing a purchase contract, there's a disclosure says, wire transfer scam advisory. There is a reason that they go out of their way attaching a form. And that's the purpose that what the CAR is doing, why we're attaching it, is to protect you. So the buyer doesn't come and sue you. But nevertheless, you need to protect your client and then just let them know that they should be on a phone call or take any additional steps to protect their money. So you just make them aware that there are scams and they have to take the necessary thing.
And you putting it on them, if they don't call me and they don't verify it, but thank God, when I don't put the phone, with the account number, they have to call me, and at that time, I verify everything with them. So, and then another thing I do, most escrow companies, I don't know how long they take to do, but I do the escrow instructions within the first day, send them to the agents and say, here's your escrow instructions, please review and let me know if you approve it. Because escrow instructions are very important. They're based on what the purchase contract is. And we're humans, sometimes we might make a mistake. So if I send it to the agent and the agent's more familiar, it's like, okay, you did this, can you fix this? Then, we can all move on. And then once they approve it, then I always put in my email, as soon as I have the prelim and your buyer's wire, I will go ahead and send out the escrow packages. And we DocuSign everything so that, it's more convenient than rather than selling, giving it to someone. Now, if you have a client that's, let's say, older and is not computer savvy, let me know. I would gladly go to their house on my own time and sit with them. And I will go and fill out the paperwork with them. Because, older people, they just don't know any better. And so, or I make an appointment, if they prefer, they can come to the office and I can meet with them, but we're there to help them out. So that's what we do. So all that stuff I just told you gets done on the first day.
Okay. And a small comment. When it comes to helping your client, you go out of your way, instead of her taking the package, you taking the package to your client. You say, you know what? I want to make sure that it goes right. So not only that you're going to take the escrow package, you're going to take your disclosures and you're going to run to your client and have them sign or complete. And they're going to start asking you questions. All right. So first of all, as you know, if you're doing any disclosures, the one disclosures that you should keep your mouth 100% shut is the TDS, transfer disclosure. You are not allowed to tell the client what to answer or what to do. And always remember, before you became their agent, somebody in their life they've been helping them out to do paperwork, to do contracts, to do all that. You cannot translate. So even though you're the same nationality and you're doing a TDS, a disclosure, please, on the TDS, you cannot translate, you cannot tell them what to put. Even if you know that they're making a mistake, you cannot do anything. If you're taking escrow documents, give it to them. If they have questions, have them call the escrow officer. Do not tell them how to do things. Pick up the phone, call escrow, and say, hi, you know what? My client has a question. Can you answer that? So, because I don't want you to be liable, because if ever there's a disclosure and you tell them, well, you know what, why don't you write this? Later, there's a lawsuit, they're gonna say, well, my dear agent told me to write this. And then all of a sudden you become part of the lawsuit. Please, and translation, things can get lost in translation. So please, even as you see, well, he's the same nationality, I'm gonna translate for them. On the TDS, for sure, you don't wanna even translate, not only to tell them what it is, don't even translate. You guys understand that? This is a liability, don't even try to translate if you're from the same nationality. Now, nevertheless, be careful of how you handle things, and always, if it's a title question, get the title officer on the phone. If it's a escrow, have escrow. Like, be very limited of how you help your client. Not that I want you to be mean, it just, this is the law. This is how things work.
So you cannot tell them what TDS is?
No, you tell them this is sets of questions that you have. But if they say, I don't understand this question, you're not gonna translate, or you know what, let's say I'm Persian and the client is Persian. So I said, okay, let me translate in Persian. Not gonna do it.
You know why you don't wanna do that? Because the words that we're translating might not transfer correctly to them. It happens to me all the time.
That, and they can just, if something goes wrong, they're
Yeah.
not gonna take the rap. They're gonna say, well,
Yeah.
you translated this whole thing to me, so it's his fault.
That's what it told me it means. And all of a sudden, you're in the middle of that.
I always tell them, due to liabilities, I cannot do this for you. So this way, they understand, they don't take it personal that you don't wanna help them, and, they get it done.
So I have a couple things before you wrap up here, though. Do you have anything to do with contingency removals?
What I do is, this is, a lot of TCs do the dates for you guys. If you have a good TC, they do all the dates and they send it to all the parties. Sometimes they ask me to do it and I don't mind doing it, so I go through and I do all the dates. Huh?
I wanted you to tell them no. There's stuff you take
Yeah.
off the plate and stuff.
Yes,
They need to keep on their own.
but your
No.
TC should be doing that.
Okay, so don't ask escrow to send contingency removals or anything like that.
No, we don't do no, as far as sending things, those parts, we don't have nothing.
It's not part of your escrow
It's not
instruction.
part of my job to do it.
You don't put that in your escrow
No.
instruction.
It's in our, what do you call it, general provisions, but removing contingencies.
No,
things
you're not
like that.
removing it, but you make in the escrow instruction, you do put the timeline.
That's what I'm talking about. Most of the time the TCs do it, but our escrow instructions doesn't have that. I can do it in a separate email, or as part of the email, I can put these are your contingency dates. It all depends.
Alright,
I see here on yellow says remove the appraisal contingency.
Those are between the agents and the,
Not jumping ahead, please
No,
do not jump ahead.
But also, that's the reason I asked. She has nothing to do with that. So that shouldn't be a question for her. That's the reason I put it out there. Contingency removals, that's your job. Don't ask escrow to do
But
it.
there are times that you write an email, escrow, I am not removing my contingency.
That has nothing to do with escrow.
Yeah, I had a loss, so in a thing, contingency is due today. We wrote an email to escrow, letting them know.
Alright,
Today is the
that's
due.
hold on. I know where she's going with this, okay.
But
So-
sometimes you do make aware of escrow because, or else. it's
Okay, so let me,
automatically
so you
No,
do
that's-
commercial, let me handle this because I know where she's going.
removed.
It's a commercial, okay, so you know what, so to clarify, we have two sets of removal of contingency. We have what we call an active and passive. Okay, so basically what it means, active basically means that contingencies have to be removed
With writing.
with a content into the form. Passive, and it happens in commercial and it happens up north, Northern California, or other states. We have different settings that they say, you know what, or even it could be here, but it mainly happens in the commercial that, hey, on the 30th days, automatically the contingency gets removed. For those instances, yes, you're gonna create a general email to the listing agent and escrow saying, you know what? At this point, we are not moving forward, we are not removing contingencies, or better yet, you should not wait for the last day. A week before, 3 days before, you should have the dialogue with the listing agent. Listen, in 2-3 days, we are about to remove contingencies. We have not done it. We need time. We need to get an extension. And as I always say, there is a form for that extension of time. There is a form you can complete, send, get an extension of contingency, extension of closing. But that conversation should not happen on the day of. It should be few days before, and the communication. Always have a clear communication with the listing agent and don't wait for the last day, because to the seller or the listing agent, it feels a little bit shortcoming, a little bit off guard, a little bit dishonest. So if there is an issue, my rule is have an open communication with the listing agent. So it's not, oh, my loan, I had that issue on the last day of consideration, I had that issue and I cannot remove it. If you tell the listing agent 2 days prior, listen, listing agent, this is the issue that we are combating regarding the loan or whatever. With that in mind, I just want to let you know that I need extra days, 2 extra days till we get this. If it's one of those contracts that it's passive, yes, and in that case, and it's not only escrow, but we do want to document it, and then for sure the listing agent, but as a provision to it, as just an extra thing, we would CC escrow on it. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And when I do send emails to everyone, I always include, like if I'm sending a client to your client, I always include you and your TC in the email, so everybody's aware. Because, so we're all on the same page. I don't ever communicate with anybody without the parties, those parties that are part of that be involved in it. Okay, so on the first day, those are all the things I do. And then please, when I send you an escrow instructions and I ask you to approve it, look at it and approve it, please take care of it. Don't look at your email 3 days later and tell me, oh, this was wrong. If I don't hear from you by the end of the first day, I'm sending the lender that first day, I'm sending them the estimated closing statement for the buyer. I'm sending them escrow instruction. I'm sending them all the things they need to get their disclosures out. So I need to get approval from you that first day. If I don't get it, I'm just gonna assume you guys are okay with it and I'm gonna send it, because the lender has certain time to send out their disclosures. So they have to have everything for me on the first day. So that's what we do. Then once I send out the packages, we just wait. There are 2 documents that the sellers always have to get notarized that we do. One's a grant deed and one's their proceeds instructions. We always get those notarized, so we let them know if they prefer to have, they can come into the office, we can notarize. If they want, we can send a notary to them, or they have the option of using their own notary. And I send them a FedEx label if they want to return it back to me.
You said grant deed and
Proceeds instructions. Now, if the seller's property is in a trust, then what we do is we send them what's called a trust certificate. Asks a series of questions about their trust the title company needs to see. That needs to be notarized too.
What is it called?
It's called certificate of trust
For the seller.
for the seller. If the buyer wants to put the property in a trust, buy their property in a trust, then we send them the same form that has to be notarized. But with the seller, when we send out the packages, I tell them in the email, I'm docu-signing this to you, please take care of it right away, send it back. And then these 2, I send in a separate email, asking them to get it notarized, or if you want to come in whatever way you want it. Sometimes I have sellers saying, you know what, this is way too much for me. I'm gonna come to your office, sit with you, and you can help me fill it out. And I'm like, please come, I can answer the questions for you. I'm not gonna fill it out for them, so.
Question. I've sold houses 3 times as a seller. I don't remember getting anything notarized myself as a seller.
You have to have, I mean, a grant deed that's you giving the property to the buyer. Did you
They
sell them in the
probably
state
did
of-
it all in.
Did you go to escrow?
Did you go to escrow?
When the seller goes.
Were you the actual
when
seller
they
or your husband?
Yeah, to you sell
In
that.
California?
Okay, so when you go to
She was in Texas and one was in Cali. Now I'm trying to think. No, they came to us.
so they.
Yeah, the
some
notary
firms-
came to you, they notarized you, you just
Right
didn't
there,
realize you
yeah.
were being notarized.
Yeah, they. did
Any
they
other
take
question?
fingerprint?
Oh, yeah, I got another
They-
question.
Sometimes they.
Let's say
didn't
there were HOA leads. How does it get paid?
I
I would
ordered
answer
the
that
demand.
after the class for you. Because we already
If there-
reviewed it, I go over it after the class.
When we get the prelim from the title company, we look through it, we read everything. So sometimes there is IRS tax liens, franchise tax board, sometimes there's child support liens. For example, a common name, let's say Jose Rodriguez. Do you know how many millions of Jose Rodriguez's are running in Los Angeles? Guess what? When I get the prelim, they say they put child support lien, and then they put, all this people's names on there that could belong to, because all these people.
Careful,
are
we're
Jose
being
Rodriguez.
recorded.
That's why I tell people always, if you have a common name, make sure you put your middle name when you're purchasing the property. So that, it distinguishes you. So then we have to, usually what I do is I ask title for the copy of the child support lien. And then I look, and then I contact the seller. I say, hey, what is your social security number? Because it shows the last four. And they'll say, well, it's not me. I tell them, great, I'm gonna send you a statement of information. They fill it in, they sign it, send it back. I send that to title. And that's how they clear and take all those liens off. Because a lot of the times that happens, even tax liens. It comes out to, again, let's say Jose Rodriguez, and Jose's been paying his taxes. So it ends up not being him. But if there's IRS lien, tax lien, we order all of that and we get it all cleared and we pay that out of the seller's proceeds at closing. Okay,
Thank
the
you,
only
thank you,
other
thank
thing I can tell you guys, that just right.
I did it again.
Okay. That's like, they're not going anywhere. They're here. If you remember, please, if you remember, you can just.
No, always covered your behind is,
CYA,
addendums,
baby.
addendums. First of all, you always want to cover your behind. I mean, sometimes you think you're doing too much. You're never doing too much to cover yourself, because I've seen the crazy, I got sued, okay? I got sued because the guy claimed that he didn't fill out. That's why I make you notarize your proceeds instructions now for the sellers, because this guy claimed that he didn't fill out the paperwork that his partner did. So I sent the money to I sent the package. They filled it out, sent it back. At the time, we didn't get it notarized. So he says his partner put his information, the money went to the partner, and I got sued. What do you call it? I didn't lose, but at the same time, now I get everybody to notarize so that I know the person that's filling that out is that person. Because that's what you guys want to do. The other thing is, what do you call, addendums. Please do not call me or email me and tell me, oh, can you drop an amendment saying this? No, I can't drop an amendment unless I have a written addendum from you. You gotta remember, every time you guys are doing an agreement, you're changing your RPA. So I need an addendum from you saying, if you're giving a credit to the buyer or whatever you're doing, get it in an addendum, send it to me, then I prepare my amendment based on your addendum. And when you're doing a repair, do not put it on a repair request sheet. Please do not do that, because lenders, what they do is if I send them an amendment for credit, they're like, where's the addendum? If I don't have an addendum, if it's on a repair request, then the red flags go up. What is wrong with the house that they need to give this much repair? So when you're doing a request for a credit, always do it on an addendum, not a repair request form. Okay, that's the only other thing.
I was about to touch on that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that happens a lot of times, a buyer and seller, they negotiate and they send a repair request. And on the repair request, the buyer says, hey, give me $5,000. And then it goes on, and then nobody let escrow know that the seller need to give credit, and the buyer never receives that credit. So basically, after the repair request is done, and you guys haven't been there, haven't done it before, but this is a form for repair request, you're asking the seller to pay or fix something. Once that has been negotiated, create an addendum that's signed by the buyer and seller, and provide the addendum to her, so she would be able to credit the buyer for the sell amount.
And you always put on there, seller to credit buyer, for 5,000, whatever, towards buyers' non-recurring closing costs and recurring closing costs. Do not mention anything about repairs, because that will raise the red flag and lenders can, decline the loan. So, okay?
Thank you so much.
Sure, anything else you need, I'm always available, my card's up there, I always answer my phone. So, another thing, sorry, I have to bring this up, when people are sellers, please always encourage your sellers if they ask you their proceeds, how to do it, because they have the option of getting a wire or, check or pick up a check. Always please tell them to let us wire the funds to them, because they get access to it right away. When you're getting a check for 600,000, it happened to someone he was helping with, it was an Escrow. This gentleman doesn't realize that his bank's gonna put a hold on it, okay? They put like a 7 to 10 day hold on it. So when our bank got it, I approved it right away, they gave him his money, he called me and cussed me out, because we were using a bank that was holding his money, and I tried to explain it to him, and he was just not having it. So please tell them to wire their funds, $600,000, your bank's gonna hold it for 10 days. So just wire it, they get the money the same day.
Sorry
Okay?
about that, by the way.
Oh, it's okay. It's not your fault, it was your client.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You know what, one last thing, a quick thing. If you have a client, a seller that is out of country, and that has just happened to me, make sure before they leave, because if they're selling the property, moving out of the country, make sure while they're here, they communicate with your escrow officer. Or you make sure from the get-go, you explain, communicate with your escrow officer and let them know how that's gonna work. Because if they're in another country and they need to notarize things, it makes things difficult. So this is one other situation that you don't wait till you open escrow. This is something that you talk about with your escrow officer from the get-go, not when you open escrow. So this is one other thing that for you to pay attention to and move. All right, so going down the list, so we had give lender a copy of the RPA, probably want to start on your command, follow up with your client on the EMD, that's your initial deposit. Going down, and then you know what? I put some of the stuff that escrow should be doing, and then it's a good idea so you know the timeline, and maybe sometimes not all escrow officers are as good as goalie, and sometimes they take their time. I'm gonna tell you, 6 months ago on one of my escrows, I had a very lousy escrow company. I got my 9A report after closing practically. Lucky for them, because the actual the contingencies were only 7 days, and I've been there and done that, and I had the experience. I put a provision in my counter that the buyer may receive 9A report after closing, and that should not be a contingency. I knew that probably the timeline, by the time that the buyer gonna receive the 9A report, it's gonna be past their contingency. I did not want the buyer to say, hey, you give me a new form. I have 5 days contingency. Now I can cancel and move on. So because I knew the timeline and I knew the situation, that was one of my items in my counter. I excluded the 9A report and let the buyer know that they're gonna get it maybe toward the closing or after closing. So that was okay. But nevertheless, that was very lazy escrow. They were not all doing things. They fill up the form wrong. As she was telling you how, sometimes with the city there's issues, and we ended up, I had to follow up many times till we finally able to give it. Now let's continue on. Going down the list, you have escrow gonna order the prelim. Prelim is preliminary title report. If you don't know what a prelim is, it just so escrow would know who's on title, if there are any liens, what have you. So accordingly, she can go on with it, and then also to provide it to the buyer. So a lot of documents that you get from escrow, it's not for your thing, and don't assume that escrow has provided those to your client. Make sure that you're sharing those documents with your buyer. So when you get the NHD, when you get the prelim, see if your client been CC'd on it, or maybe just to be on the safe side, forward that email to your client so you documenting that you have given your client those reports. So the prelim NHD, these are things that one of the first things that the escrow orders and gets, and the NHD and the prelim usually happens within the first couple days. So this is something that everybody has to order. If you're not in receipt of those within the first 3-4 days, maybe you want to call escrow and say, by the way, have you ordered prelim? Oh, have you ordered NHD? So sometimes you have to follow up with everyone. Escrow officer, loan officer, listing agent. Or if you are the listing agent, you need to follow up with the selling agent. How? How are you doing with loan? Are you in communication with your loan officer? How is the buyer doing? When are they going to do inspection? So as an agent, you cannot just let it go and say, well, it's their inspection, it's their loan. Because if the buyer does not perform, you are the one that have to sit there and answer to the seller. Make sense? So that's why it is your job. The reason make and submit disclosures, you know, have an orange all the way to the like 11th day. Because the reason I put an X on every single day, because you need to check on that every day. You have to make sure that you have received disclosures, you submit it, you go over your checklist to make sure all the disclosures been done. Make sure that they're complete, they're updated, they're complete, and that you have all of them. If there's anything missing, make sure you ask the listing agent. If the vice versa, if you're a listing agent, ask the selling agent. You know what, I'm missing so and so. So you need to follow up. Hey, appraiser is not here. What's going on with the appraiser? If you're the listing agent, 5 days passes by. You call the selling agent. Hey, is your guy getting a loan? Is there an appraiser coming out? When is the appraiser coming out? When you see the appraiser is coming late, there's an issue. That's, you know, and following up with the selling agent, you're putting him on notice. Move your butt. Basically, you're telling the selling agent, I'm here and you know what? If you don't move and do things on time, I'm gonna kick you out of escrow. That's what I do. I'm in communication with the selling agent. If within the first 5 days, I don't hear from the selling agent or the appraiser, hey, I'm gonna be coming in 2 days to do an appraisal, my red flag goes up. If there's a 10-day appraisal contingency, 5 days passes by, I'm not hearing anything from the selling agent or the lender or appraiser, I'm gonna start calling the selling agent first. Say, hey, are you guys getting a loan? Are you gonna do an appraisal? What's going on? Have you been in communication with your loan officer or appraiser? Usually, appraisers would get the listing agent number, call the listing agent to make an appointment and to come. Some selling agent, they might think that they're calling them, and sometimes appraisers do call the selling agent, the buyer's agent. So don't assume that, you know, and that confusion happens because sometimes they call the listing agent, sometimes they call the buyer's agent. So don't, and then that's why you need to be in communication. Make sense? All right. Let me go now. So you know what? As you see on the first days, I did the prelim, NHD, HOA, 9A report. These are things that escrow has to jump on it and do right away. Why? Because it takes time till those reports come back. That's why it's essential for you to communicate with escrow. If escrow needs payment from the seller, you need to be part of it. Hey, seller, by the way, did you receive a DocuSign or a form to be, you know, for your credit card? If you've been working with that escrow officer before, you know how she works. If you've been working with Goldie, she would be paying for it. If it's a different escrow company, you know they don't pay for it. So you're gonna communicate escrow and the seller, make sure that they're on the same page and they pay. So those delays, you're not gonna get paid unless that escrow closes, right? So you need to be involved. You need to be on top of this. That's your job. That's what you're getting paid for, right? All right. So you know what? Make and submit disclosure termite reports. Do your EBIT while the buyer doing inspection. So one of the stuff that you're gonna be doing, you're setting up inspection, right? And the day that the inspector is there doing inspection, that's the perfect time to do your EBIT. What's the EBIT? It's the agent visual disclosure. That's when you get to disclose what you see. Why it's important? A lot of times sellers may forget to mention stuff. You remember on the TDS, I told you, don't help the seller, right? You cannot tell them if they made any mistakes or they forgot to disclose things. That's the part that you can, if this is an obvious issue, you can put that in the EBIT. And well, we're gonna have a separate class about what are the things that you're gonna disclose in EBIT, but usually this is the agent putting an agent cap on there. And they're not a mold specialist, they're not earthquake specialists, they're not smelling specialists, there are no specialists. They can just, there's a smell, there's a crack, there's a stain.
As opposed to, you can smell mold.
I can smell newly fresh
Crack
paint.
caused by foundation issue. You don't know that. It's just there. It's there and that's it.
That's it. So that's your evidence. Order and review retrofitting. If you're the listing agent and the selling agent, depending what the contract is, you need to order and review retrofitting. Usually there's a retrofitting company that knows what are the required retrofitting for that city, for that area. When they come out, they need to know, they would know if they need to check for the earthquake shut off. And if there is not one, they're gonna install it. They're gonna come and do the report and give you an invoice. You need to upload on your command. If there's any repairs to be done, they're gonna let you know and they say, hey, seller, would you like to pay for us to fix it? The seller either can have the retrofitting fix it, or the seller can, get a handyman or some other person to do it. At the end, the retrofitting company will sign off. They can come back, review, and sign off that everything has been done. Make sense? All right.
So the termite report is mandatory.
No, it's not mandatory. It's what, as I mentioned at the beginning, the buyer can do mold, fireplace inspection, chimney inspection, they can do sewer line inspection, mold inspection, on and on. But the most common inspection that we see is termite and a general inspection and a termite inspection. Okay, and these are the two, and that's why I mentioned those two, but there are other inspection, but there are things that needs to be done. Sometimes per contract, maybe the buyer asking the seller to provide a termite report. That used to be the norm. If that's the case, that's why the buyer has to review that termite report and accordingly say, hey, I reviewed it. I want the seller pay for the repairs. So that's why you're reviewing the termite
When
report.
there's termites, you do the termite problem when you buy the house, right?
You do it, there's a report.
There's a report, let's say there's termites.
Uh-huh.
When do you start putting those things over the house?
The 10th. Okay, basically, these are all, it's gonna be part of your repair request. You're gonna, those are things that, the buyer and seller are gonna, a lot of times sellers, they don't want to tent the place. Why? Because the seller has to be out of the place for 3 days. Practically packing out, moving for 3 days out. And a lot of times sellers, they don't want to do that. They rather give you a credit and you do it once the house is yours. So those are separate things. It's just a review, and then those are all negotiation, and we leave that for later. It's just for you to know. And then, as you review the retrofitting and the inspection and the termite, then if you go to the next page, that's why you have the repair request and repair response. I have it in blue, and then your timeline. If you did see the X's, the repair request and all that gets done. There's a timeline. You see the yellow line? This is the 17-day contingency. Just make sure that you're done with all, you see, from the 9th day, you're working on resolving this issue. So by the contingency period, we move on. This item has been resolved. Make sense? That's why I put the yellow 17-day, so you know your timeline. That's when it gets here, this should have already been resolved. So don't wait for the last day. That's why when I'm putting excess, it means these days you should be on this every single day, checking and reviewing and seeing where you're going with this. Nevertheless, you can. The reason I didn't put it on the first few days, because a lot of times you haven't done an inspection to start working on the repair request. That's why the first few days, I just don't put anything because you have nothing to work off of, right? All right. Going
I
down.
have a question. When it says remove appraisal contingency, what does that have to do with the listing agent? Doesn't the buyer's agent?
You're skipping ahead, so.
Again, hold on. Okay, so repair request, make sure that there has order appraisal. You know what, and then, if you see, I put both selling agent and listing agent. So it doesn't mean, since you're the listing agent, you have to let it go. It's something that both the listing agent and the selling agent has to follow up on. Make sense? Okay, one of the things that a lot of times people totally forget, it's on warranty. All the time, they're about to close escrow, and all the time I have to order home warranty. So the way that it works, you give them choice of 3 home warranties, you give it to the buyer, and let them choose one. And what the home warranty company would ask them is for escrow information or escrow email. Home warranty would send an invoice to escrow. And then that's how the home warranty would get paid. Make sense? So that's how the system would work. If I provide them with 3 and then they choose one, a lot of times I would create an email, a 3-way email between that. If I know the wrap for that home warranty, I would create an email, say, hey, Sharon, you know what, this is my client so-and-so, they're interested in getting a home warranty. Their limit is 600 or 700, whatever per contract is, whatever negotiated. It's a condo. And if it's a house, there's a pool, there's this and this. So I just give them basic information. So the home warranty representative knows what to go off of. So sometimes if I want to jumpstart, I would let the home warranty representative know that we negotiated that the buyer has up to this amount to get a home warranty, and then she can, this way, it would be done accordingly. Make sense? Okay. Next. Prepare to remove inspection contingencies. So at any time, you're constantly working on different contingencies to be removed. Most commonly, most oftenly, it's your due diligence. Due diligence contingencies fall into 2 parts. The physical part of it, which is the inspection, and then the reports. So you have to make sure that the buyer has reviewed the HOA reports. They have reviewed the prelim, NHD, and any other reports that they obtain from escrow or the seller, and that have done their inspection. So that's where due diligence, the correct word, a lot of times say inspection contingency. The right word should be due diligence contingency, because you know what, that's part of what the buyer has to do their due diligence, and part of doing their diligence is doing an inspection. Make sense? All right. Make sure that you have uploaded all documents in command. The reason I put that in, because a lot of times, either the seller didn't give you all the disclosures, or there are additional disclosures on command that you may or may not be aware of. And once escrow closes, or once you remove contingencies or what have you, then getting signatures, it becomes a hassle. So my recommendation is, before you remove all contingencies, make sure you go upload all the disclosures on command. Make sure that you have uploaded whatever necessary document that the command demands. This way, you feel comfortable that all the paperwork has been done. Make sense? The only way you're gonna get paid is when you upload all your paperwork. If you do not submit all documents, as the office will not give your commission check. Do you understand that?
Say that again.
Yeah, exactly.
If
If you don't upload all your paperwork
You heard him right.
on command, you're not getting your
Not getting
commission.
paid.
Okay, so that's why I'm telling you, follow up with your paperwork. Next, well, we've been working on your due diligence, then there is appraisal and loan contingency. Usually when it comes to the appraisal, the default is on the 17th day. On the loan is 21 days. The reason that I start putting excess here after the 17th day, because part of the loan contingency, for the loan to be approved, most commonly, the underwriter needs to see the appraisal. So that's why it's important to follow up on appraisal, because the only way that the underwriter can approve the loan, they have to see the appraisal value, right? That's why if the appraisal gets done late, what happens? Your loan approval gets delayed as well too. That's why it's essential for you to be on top of it to make sure that they do the appraisal right away.
How long is the appraisal good for?
It's per transaction, per that company. Other companies might not accept it. So it's not, oh, I have this appraisal. If this client cancels, I can give it to the next buyer. Because most
Yeah.
lenders, they want to do their
Also,
own appraisal.
The buyer owns the appraisal. They bought it, they paid. So the seller can take that appraisal and apply it to a new buyer because it's not that new buyer.
Sometimes it's even worse. Even it's not the buyer, it's the lenders.
Right. Right.
So, it gets even worse.
Well, with with FHA, right? If there's an appraisal on file for the property, it stays on there for 90.
Yeah, so there are certain rules and regulations to follow. Great point. Next, buyer to deposit the rest of the fund. So a lot of times, the buyers they don't know that they have to come up with a difference. The one part that, is an issue, a lot of people say, well, it's $1 million. Give my deposit in the 25%, $250,000 on $1 million. I have to put 25% down or 20% down. It's $200. Let's say it's a 20% down. It's 20% is 200. And again, it was like, okay, you know what? It's time for me to deposit $200,000 into escrow. But that's not the case. Because on top of that, there's escrow fee, there's a lender fee. There is probably those fees gets added on.
How much deposit did you put in, sir?
The 20% of the initial deposit 30,000 because it's 2%. So your EMD, your initial deposit was 30. So, and then your down payment should be 200. So 170 was the balance, right? That you have to come up with. But then you also had, the buyer has to pay their share of the escrow fees, their share of title fees. Okay, so there is even in the contract, you say seller to pay for title insurance. If the buyer getting a loan, there is a mortgage title insurance, and that's the buyer's responsibility. So that's a common question that we get. So one of those common questions that escrow gets is, oh, contract says seller pays for title insurance. Why are you billing me for that? You know what? Because yes, the seller is insuring the title of it, but for the mortgage part of it, that's what the buyer has to
And
pay.
it goes through escrow, right?
All of these, escrow is your hub.
Escrow is your bank.
You know what? All the it's a hub, it's a grand central. So anything that happens, escrow is involved.
So I have to give the email of escrow officer to the bank.
That's from the get-go. That's what, the escrow is the grand central. Escrow is the one that's gonna be communicating when it's time for funding, because you know what? It's $1 million, right? And then the lender coming out with the 800, right? You're getting a loan for 800, right? So lender has to deposit
How much closing costs first?
5 to 10 grand.
closing, usually, let's say at 2%, let's say that there is about a $20,000 fee. So these are some of the stuff that you need, and you know what? That's one of the reasons that in the past, if you go back 20 years, all of a sudden, at the last day, escrow would send a bill to the buyer, say, hey, you owe this much. And the buyer goes, oh my God, I have to bring another $20,000? Where am I gonna get that? Now they change it. Now when escrow opens, you know what, from the get-go, the lender and escrow, they give you an estimated fees. So the buyer has a very good idea how much more or what are the other costs from the get-go. Within the first 10 days, as opening escrow, usually the buyer should be aware of those additional fees. All right, let's move on.
Oh, sorry, I got another question.
Yeah,
So the closing cost for the loan officer, it goes through escrow.
yeah.
So, yeah,
The points that they charge, all the other fees they charge, they put it in there.
escrow, so, they send the loan officer sends an invoice to the escrow officer.
So basically, there's a situation that you have you know what, within the lender, between the bank, there is a section that their job is only to be in communication with escrow and handle the closing. So whatever they need, whatever, they need to transact with each other, all of this communication gonna happen. Yeah. All right, moving on. So the walkthrough, if you see, all the way, this being the 30th day, this is 5 days before, but you have to do it. The latest is 5 days prior to closing.
Sorry, Joe.
Earliest.
Can I ask two things real fast?
Yeah.
Just wondering, so the initial deposit, is that the same thing as an earnest money deposit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
also the closing costs, does that get added onto like the loan that you're taking out?
No.
Or it's,
No, that's separate.
but it's still part of like the balance, right? Or like. how do
That's
you-
a
how do
balance. Those are fees
Uh-huh.
that the buyer has to pay. Those, they don't get shoved into the loan. The loan is 800, that's it.
Uh-huh.
Any other fee is out of pocket.
How does the buyer do it? Like he does, like, oh man, I gotta pay this 20 grand, I don't have it.
That's the reason that 2007, 2008, they changed the law, and now lenders and escrow companies, they have to let the buyer know from at the beginning, within the first 5 days.
I see, sorry.
So at one point, that was an issue that all of a sudden at the end, escrow would send a statement saying, hey, you bring this much. They changed the law. Now the escrow companies, they have to let them know at the beginning. That's one of the changes that they did to the industry. All right, okay, what is a walkthrough? First thing, as I mentioned it in the purchase contract, it is not a contingency. So it's not like the buyer can come and do a walk through the property and say, you know what? This one here, not acceptable. Hold on the escrow, I'm not closing. You know what? So one of the things that you need to understand that it is not a contingency.
The last minute problems that may occur.
Unless it's a major issue,
Like a plumbing.
like not even plumbing. The house has burned. Unless it's a major item, you know what, that's why, a lot of times I say, don't let the seller fix things. Because it's always not gonna be to the standard of the buyer. I always prefer that the buyer would get a credit and they fix it on their own. Because always there's gonna be. And let me give you a funny situation in regarding to the walkthrough. Walkthrough, I'm selling a property, I have a tough buyer, tough seller, and the seller moved out, left the piano there. And the buyer comes do a walkthrough, not only the piano, on the outside, there were some ways and lifting things and all that. And the buyer comes and say, hey, the seller forgot to,
Yeah.
I don't know. Just, no, they need to remove it. I don't want this in here. So, you know what, I'm gonna tell them, it is what it is. And the buyer says, I'm not closing escrow till the seller removes this piano and that. I said, okay, whatever you want to do, but I don't think that's something that I can mandate the seller. And then I, you know, and the buyer was actually the agent too. So the agent was representing themselves. So listen, if I were you, I would check with your broker to see what are the legalities with this. You know, I really didn't want to disappoint her. But once she went back and she came back, she knew it's not a contingency, she cannot hold it. You can sue the seller and say you left X and Y and Z swim in a small claim court, but you cannot say, well, you left the piano there. I'm not closing the escrow till you remove this. Make sense? So
What happens if you do say that?
what?
What happens if a buyer says, I'm not closing escrow until you move the piano?
Well, you know what? Then they're gonna be in default. If they don't close, you give them a demand to close, and if they don't, seller would collect their deposit and cancel
Because
So
the
my-
seller is entitled to the earnest money deposit if like
Yeah.
the.
it.
as-
So
They
Yeah,
can try, but you gotta go mediation and arbitration, so.
The last minute, one of my neighbors last week.
I don't get involved, by the way, with that. I say, listen, consult with an attorney.
Right.
And I would ask the seller to do it, but nevertheless, you know what, these are not decisions that I make. That's why I refer her to consult with her attorney and her broker.
So for me, those two line items are flipped. So I'm doing the walkthrough before I send the rest of my money. If I'm the buyer's agent, right? Let's do this walkthrough, then we're gonna send our money.
Let me
Now,
give
if
you,
there is a piano and there is weights, I'm gonna call that agent, I'm gonna say, hey, we're not gonna close, we're not gonna put the rest of our money in until those items are fixed. Or if there's subpar repairs, or if there's a new issue, right? Or I had a client who removed all the curtains out of the house. I'm gonna say that, and then we're just gonna fight over it.
okay,
Because
let me tell you if you going that route, I can help you with that. There's a part in the contract that it says the seller has to remove any debris or anything from the property. So there is a clause in there.
Yeah.
There's a
Before
clause.
you fund, you should do that.
You know what, there is a clause, and in the past, we used to do, and we would used to add a statement in there. Do you know what we used to
In the RPA,
in the RPA?
what's that?
Seller to deliver the property from all debris and deliver the property room clean or some stage.
Oh, okay, yeah,
You
we use that
remember
for
that?
cash for keys, yeah.
Huh?
Broom swept clean.
But, and then not only for cash or keys, for just a standard
Yeah.
thing. So we used, because we would get properties and then I would go into the garage and the seller left all the stuff in the garage. Then the buyer has to hire a haul system, a hauling company to come and remove tile or one, and this actually happened. So these are things that have happened. That's what you learn. So when the next time you're writing an offer and you see a backyard full of garbage and trash and junk, you put that straight in the contract. You say, you know what? 5 days before close of escrow, all of these need to be gone. So when I'm doing the walkthrough, those are to be done. So when you see that, and that comes from experience, you see things, and then when you write the offer, you reflect on it.
And what is the term you said, free of debris?
Well, the contract is now in the contract.
In the contract.
It's in the contract.
Can a piano be considered like the debris? I don't think
Well, it's
so.
not an attachment and there's not a fix to the house, so it needs to go. So, and it depends what side you're on, right? If you're the seller's agent and the buyer says that to you, you can say, well, no, it's not a contingency, we're not doing it. And then you talk to your client and say, hey, can you, like, nobody gets paid if you don't remove this piano.
Right.
So, like, what are we gonna do? And then it's on you you're gonna solve the problem regardless. If the buyer says, no, I'm not taking it, the seller says, no, I'm not removing it, the agent's figured out.
Can you just go in there and like be like, yo, hey,
Yeah.
let's get a couple dudes and just
Yeah.
Yeah,
move the
a lot
piano?
of agents pay for it out of their own
Yeah,
pockets.
that's where if buyer and sell, like an agent's not gonna say, I don't want my $20,000 check.
Yeah.
So there are different ways to do it. All right, because of the time, all right, so walk through, sign loan docs, and then it probably happened before then. and then tell you, once you need to sign your loan docs, and submit the rest of the money. So the lender doesn't get that, all that in escrow, and escrow doesn't confirm it. It doesn't send an email saying, hey, lender, the loan docs been signed, the rest of the deposit is here. That's when the lender would fund the rest of the money. Okay, and the title gets recorded. Look at the timeline. I put red because these are essential time, and those things need to be done on a timely basis. If the buyer does not deposit the rest of their funds on a timely basis, that's gonna delay. So all of these, if they need to bring money from different accounts, they need to go. And then like the other thing that Gordy mentioned, if the money gonna have a hold, make sure it gets wired and they know all this money is ready to go. Because sometimes if it doesn't come from the right account, the lender might reject it. So if it was supposed to come from your account, now it's coming from your uncle's account, the lender might have an issue with that. So these are some of the things that you may not know because of experience, or the buyer may not know, but these are some of the things that you want to let your buyer know. Hey, make sure, from the get-go, all your money is in one account. You are in communication with the lender that the rest of the deposit, where the money is coming from, which account is coming from. Because sometimes people say, hey, I have some money in my X and Y account and all that. And the lender wants to know, where did you actually get the money? And these are some of the stuff that prior to closing has to be sorted out with the lender.
So why would the escrow officer sign loan docs? That's the notary, right?
Well, escrow officer is a notary.
So
A lot of times, the buyer and the seller, they go to escrow to notarize things. So and then escrow officer is the one that's sending out notary. Why? Because when they get the loan doc, it's not only the loan doc that escrow company wants to be notarized. There are additional documents that what escrow officer does. They get the loan package, the loan docs from the lender, right? Then they insert some of their own documents that they need to be initialed or signed
from the escrow.
HOA.
from escrow. You know what? And then they create one package, they email it, or the notary, the mobile notary comes, picks it up, takes it to the buyer, have him sign and return it. Or the buyer comes into escrow and sign all of those docs. So, that's why the most common thing is that the loan docs goes to escrow. Escrow creates a package, send it out for signature.
How
for
long
notary.
does title take to get recorded?
Recording,
Next day.
so it's the next day. So once everything is there, on the 30th day, so basically, once escrow confirmed that everything, the money was funded, everything is there, they schedule the title company to record it. And then what happens? There are many title companies, as you notice, right? So they all go to the recorder's office, right? Each company regularly given each day different slot. So for example, Clear Title today might be number 2, tomorrow they might be number 5, the next day they might be number 10. And as soon as it's their turn to provide all the documents that they're recording, they call the escrow company and say, hey, re-record it. So the notification of recording is when escrow receives a call or some sort of a communication from the title company that, hey, and so that can happen 8 in the morning, can happen 12, can happen 4 p.m. It just depends on that day, what slot time was the turn for that title company.
Recording is closing.
Isn't that constructive notice or something? No, maybe I'm.
So you know what, and the importance of the
I'm like-
recording, that's when the buyers officially
The new one.
the new owner. Before that, and I have stories to tell you, but they are short.
Joe, why did you say selling agents sign loan docs? Selling agents sign loan docs?
That's for responsible, not who signed it.
Huh?
They're responsible for making
Who
sure.
follows up on that?
Oh, the seller follows up on the loan docs. Selling agent.
So
Selling it in escrow.
But
Selling it
loan
in
docs
escrow.
is selling agent and escrow.
What does the selling agent have to sign?
They have to make sure that, you know what, from the get-go, you are constantly communicating with your client.
That initial doesn't mean you do it, it means you're responsible for
You
checking.
follow up, it's following up. These are the people that you follow, who's responsible to follow up, not the actual person that signed.
Then you get the keys.
Well, you know what, one of the things that I want to tell you with the keys, a lot of times, you know what? Sellers, they don't provide all the remotes and all that. So a lot of times at walkthrough, I demand to see the remotes and the keys. Or I would like the listing agent to already be in, if it's a vacant property,
Hold instead of the-
yeah, they will have to be in possession of all that
And
at the
then,
walkthrough.
and then
And the
the,
walkthrough, while I'm at the walkthrough, please make sure at the walkthrough, you bring your client and make sure the seller is there, if possible. The purpose of the walkthrough is for the buyer to know when is the garbage day, what is this light doing, why there's a switch here, how the pool, where's the pool, who's the pool guy, you know, a lot of this stuff, you know, because after they purchase the house and the seller is gone. So that's the time, you have to have a list of items that you should be communicating with the seller. Hey, who is your gardener? Who is your poolman? What day is your garbage day? You know what? How is this pool work? Where's this light switch for the pool? So there are a lot of, so as you walk through the house, see what everything does. Don't just dismiss, oh, this is just a switch. What is that switch? So when you take over the house, you know what the hell is. You know, if you don't know how to use the AC, how do I use the AC? And then I have an alarm company. I had a closing. It has a smart home, and you know what? There were too many things. So I took a video of the seller explaining to me how to use it, and I emailed it to the buyer because you know the buyer couldn't be there, but I wanted some sort of a video, so I did that.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much. I have to run.
Okay,
I'm 10 minutes late.
Thanks, Aaron.
thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Thank you for attending.
Exchanging keys.
Find a deal this weekend.
Make sure that, you know what, before closing, you're handling the keys. You know who has it, where it is, and you are able to collect it at the closing. Don't leave it at the last time. Don't think it's gonna be in the mailbox. Make sure you have a clear and friendly communication with the listing agent, so you can get all the keys, the mailbox key. So there's many keys and, you know, so, you know what, I had a closing where we didn't get a mailbox key. Well, I was the mentor on it, and you know what, it was a situation that it was in Orange County, and then we had to pay a locksmith to come and redo the mailbox key. And all of a sudden, a simple key cost us $80. You know, so there are certain things that you want to push and make sure that the key exists.
So the selling agent and listing agent have to be there to exchange keys to the buyer?
No, you know what, a lot of times, the listing agent would have an envelope with all the keys, remotes and all that, and then they might have it in their office, you go pick it up, or, you know, or they come and pick it up, so there are different ways of exchanging keys.
Does keys count like also for like digital stuff too? Like,
Yeah,
like if you have a
digital, so,
smart,
yeah.
smart home, smart
Fob,
whatever.
or, yeah, but you know what, a lot of the digital stuff, I try to take care of and understanding it during the walkthrough. I don't leave it at closing.
Right.
Too late. If there's a code for the garage, I specifically want that. I would make a list of those items, not for the closing. At walkthrough, I say, you know what? I want the code for the pad. I want the key for that, and I want to know how many of each do you have. And I try to have that communication, maybe in form of an email, so I document. Make sense? All right. So upload the file, documents, and all to command. But one of the other things that I do, I create a file for my client, I zip it, and I send it to my client so they have the copy of all the documents. Because a lot of times I had them sign this document, that document, and then 6 months later they go, oh, by the way, where's my purchase plan? Where is that? Where is that? So, oh, I want to see the inspection report. So what I do, I create a zip file and I share it with them, so. Next thing that I'm gonna do, there's only one other thing that I'm gonna go over, and it's the checklist. I know the class is over, but for those of you. So, what I shared with you, and you should have a copy of it, you guys have a copy of the
Checklist.
checklist? All right, so the checklist. You see on the right, unfortunately, it doesn't, the triangle should say A, office, and all. Where it says, you see the triangle and the two T's? But actually, it's all, and the way it was printed here, it doesn't show. So I want to make sure you can read it correctly. So basically, a lot of times we are confused. What document are we sharing with the office? What documents are we sharing with escrow? And what document is, everybody has to sign or have.
So the A is all?
All. Agents, A is agent,
Uh-huh.
and all is escrow.
All this.
It means
Agent.
everybody has to be, so basically it's a document that it gets signed by the buyer, signed by the seller, and a copy of it goes to escrow. So that's how everybody, so let's say if it's a NHD report, NHD statement, it gets signed by agent, signed by the buyer, the seller, and a copy of it goes to escrow. Make sense? It's like a purchase contract. It's signed by buyer, by seller, and escrow gets a copy of it. All right? So basically, print out of the MLS. I just didn't put that anything, but all of the listing item is just for the listing agent, right? It's just a listing. But then when you have the wire fraud and all that has to be between the agents. This is the listing side of it.
Seller advisory, who does that go to?
Well, this is just between you and the office. Okay, because some of these things are just on the listing side, so the listing side, you don't need to share your listing contract with the buyer or the seller, with the buyer or the selling agent or the buyer agent. But when it comes down to the sell file. Okay, now you have the sell file. So you have the MLS sheet, you upload it on command. Property profile, it goes on command. The office basically means you're uploading it on command, right? Earnest money deposits, well, it comes with the agent, but again, most of this has to be posted. This is a document that's gonna be shared with the escrow and all that, but nevertheless. So you have the possible representation, it doesn't go to escrow, it's just something that agents transact, right? If it doesn't escrow, don't share none of this. Okay, when it comes to residential purchase contract, here it says all. It's hard to see, it feels like a triangle and TT, but actually it's all. So for those, so these are, I tried to create a possibility for you guys to see it all. Okay, now you can see it better. Yeah. All right, so KW addendum, it has to be all agents, but you don't share it with escrow. Escrow doesn't need to see the KW addendum unless in our office you don't need to. Some offices you do because there is a like a $300 or $500 fee that the company charges, and we have some Keller Williams offices that they charge $500 fee. Then you share that with escrow so they can collect it from the buyer or from your client. Make sense? But in this office, we do not have that. Affiliated, it just doesn't go to escrow. It's just the agents. Legal, it just doesn't go even to the other side. It's only for your side and you share it only with the office. Local addendum, it's between agents. Escrow doesn't need a copy of that. All these disclosures, it's just between agents. Now, you do have NHDs 9A report, certificate of compliance, PERTA and all that, that actually comes from Escrow. So these are things that gonna be signed and dealt with Escrow. Physical inspection report waiver, agents. What is that? That's when the buyer decides, hey, I'm tearing this property down, I'm not gonna do inspection. So to protect yourself, you have them sign a buyer inspection waiver that they're not.
Which one is that?
BIW,
What was it?
number 52. So this is something that's just
That's
transacted.
in contingency. review.
No, 45 on the common.
Oh, 45, physical
Yeah.
inspection, so if he wants to knock it down,
So if the buyer decides that they're not gonna do any inspection, they need to sign a BIW.
oh, wow, I didn't know.
So, this way, they're gonna, well, I didn't know, the buyer can come back after closing and say, I didn't know I can do inspection. So later on, they don't hold you responsible, you have them sign a buyer inspection waiver saying that the buyer decided not to do any inspection. So later on, you don't get sued. All right? So as we go down. Okay, so as we're going down, buyer inspection, what the BIE, it's basically list of different inspection that the buyer can do. And if you want, you can provide that to the buyer, say, hey, buyer, these are the list of inspection that they can do and they can sign up on it. There's a edit that it's gonna be, and it's between agents. Repair request is between agents. Well, here, you see, it says seller, response to buyer repair request, RRR, and I said all. The reason I said all, including escrow, because if there is a credit that the seller gonna give the buyer, you need to notify it. Somehow escrow needs to know, so they can give the buyer credit. Otherwise, there's no way for escrow to know that there was a dialogue or communication that the seller gonna give a credit to the buyer. Make sense?
If it was lead-based before paint disclosure, what's the point of doing that? Because a lot of houses are before 1978 too. You see what I'm trying to say?
It's irrelevant to that.
The lead-based things?
Yeah.
So do you have to do that? You have to
No,
do that?
it's there. If it applies, it applies. If it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply.
What do you mean if it doesn't apply?
If it's built before that year, you do it. If not, that's not apply.
A lot of, so if it's built before 1978, then you have to do that?
Yeah. That's basically very straightforward. Either yes or no. Okay, so smoke detectors, agents, termite reports, acknowledged signed by on the diagram. Oh, let me give you a provision to the termite report. If on your RPA, you requested the seller to provide a termite report, then the termite report gets shared with escrow. But if it was not on your RPA and the buyer, they did it by themselves, got nothing to do with it, this is something that was not on contract, but the buyer decided to do their own, then you do not share with escrow. But if it was an item that was requested originally on the RPA, then you share the report with escrow. Otherwise, please do not share with escrow. Why? Because the moment you provide, the lender, the escrow has to share with the lender. Then lender gonna start asking questions. Oh, was the repair done? Oh, did you tend the house? Then lender says, well, I'm not funding till those issues are cured. So you're gonna create a issue. So unless it was, and that's why a lot of times I recommend buyers not to request on the RPA a termite report, because once it's recorded on RPA and the lender reads the RPA and sees that there has to be a termite report, then the lender gonna ask for it. And if there is work to be done, lender will not close unless the work is done. Make sense?
So I apologize, if you don't ask it on the RPA, where are you gonna ask it?
No, the question is, are we gonna share the termite report? The only time you're gonna share termite report with escrow is when the termite report was requested on the RPA. If it was not requested on the RPA, on the purchase contract, do not share with escrow.
So basically, just because it's not in the contract doesn't mean the buyer can't do it. So sometimes after they'll decide, or maybe they saw something in the home inspection and the home inspector said, hey, that might be an issue, you might want to get a pest inspection. It's not a part of the contract, but they can still get it done.
Alright, so next you have the walkthrough, retrofitting inspection with the county of Los Angeles, if that reflects you. Termite completion. If there was something done and the termite company had to do repairs, after they do the job, they create a form that's called termite completion. And that form has to be provided to escrow, and in return, escrow can provide it to the lender. Say, hey, here's a certificate that the termite issues were solved.
So
Make sense?
escrow and inspector are doing, are in communication.
Uh-huh.
What is it, escrow sends, the document to the inspector? Is that what it is, number 59?
Number 59,
Did you talk about that?
59.
Sorry, 56, sorry, termite report. So the escrow officer does what? Sends it to the inspector, right? Sorry, the inspector sends it to escrow.
Doesn't have to be with sometimes the termite company does, depending what you instruct them. You instruct them, if it's something that was requested by, usually they send it to you, but a lot of times termite companies, they ask you, do you want me to share this with the escrow company? And they, that's, and if that was the request was on the RPA, you're gonna tell them, yeah, go ahead and send it, but usually they send it to you. But most often, I tell my guy to send any report to me, and then I make the decision if I want to share it with escrow.
And then you have, and then the listing agent, everybody has to look at it. The listing agent, buyer's agent. So what it is, they all.
Not necessarily, because you know what? If because it depends. If I want the seller to pay for it, of course I have to share the report. Say, hey, seller, here's a report on termite, says that there's a termite and this is the cost of it. So I have to share that to prove that there's termite with the seller, but not with escrow.
So the seller pays for it by credit card or?
Again, those are all negotiable. These are all depending on the contract. Did we ask the seller to pay for it or not?
Yeah, seller pays for it.
Okay, so if it was on the RPA, if it was on the RPA, if you requested that the seller would pay for a termite report, then you have to share it with escrow.
Okay, so.
If it's being paid through escrow.
But if it's not on the.
The payment, don't confuse yourself about the payment. Delete that. We are not talking about payment, so don't go there. We are talking about, are we supposed to share the report or not? So don't.
So you share the report to the escrow?
If it's on the RPA, yes. If it was not requested on the RPA, no. Okay. So there is a form for the walkthrough. It's called the VP, verification of property condition, number 65. And then probably the retrofitting company is gonna provide their report or invoice to escrow, and you're gonna get a copy of it from escrow or directly from them. Termite will provide, and then there's gonna be all the escrow closing statement that you need to provide to the office. So you remember, FERPTA, if you remember all those other items that we talked about, there's a bunch of other forms. There's the FERPTA, there's the buyer or seller closing statement. There is, water cert. And then also there is approval of the HOA. So depending on the escrow company or what kind of transaction, you're gonna receive a package at the closing, and that package has to be shared with the office.
Okay, let me give you some game. That buyer's package, right? There's a cushion built into escrow. So when they send their balance over of $30,000 or whatever escrow tells them, there's a cushion in there. They don't really pay attention to it, right? But they basically, most of the time, they get a little bit of money back. Grand, couple grand, whatever that cushion, right? I like to deliver that money. So they just closed, they bought a house, they're all excited, they forgot, then you say, hey, here's your closing package. and they get a little bit of money back and makes them happy. So I always make sure I deliver that, because escrow says, you want me to mail it? Or you want, now I'm coming to pick that up. I'm gonna bring some money to my client, so that's one thing I do with closing practice.
Good game.
Yeah, because, I mean, they can mail it, they'll get it in the mail, they'll be like, oh, thank you, escrow. Hell no, say thank you to me. I brought you the check, and then you ask for a referral.
Sorry, when it says all, that means that everybody has to
Seller, buyer, as well.
seller, buyer, escrow, listing agent, buyer's agent. Everybody gets involved.
Yeah.
So everybody has to sign up on it,
Not sign up, receive it.
or to receive it.
Sometimes they need to sign, sometimes they just, like if it's a preliminary title report, everybody gonna get it. If it's an NHD report, everybody gonna get it, everything's gonna be shared with everyone, and it's coming from us, so everyone, but there's also the acknowledgement of the NHD statement that it gets shared by everyone, including us.
Acknowledgement of what?
In real estate, whenever we talk about acknowledgement, it means that somebody is signing on it to show that they have received it. That's
Acknowledgement means I don't agree, I don't disagree, but I
I
have
got it,
received.
think I got it.
That's why you see the initials on pages, that's why you see the signatures on all the disclosures and all that. It's the acknowledgement that I received this disclosure. All right, so
Thank you.
I think we went a little bit overboard, but do you have any questions?
It's a great job.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Title, unfortunately, Title was not able to come.
Probably a good thing, because that would have added another 30 minutes.
Yeah, nevertheless, what I gonna do for you guys, either from, Dearmark or from my own title company, the title officer that I also work with lawyers, I'm gonna provide you with additional, title information. I think I have some stuff here that I can share with you guys. A lot of times there's the vesting, a lot of times. The question is when the
Thank you.
the buyer is closing, how do they want to hold title? And this form kind of tell you what's the difference and what's the consequences, depending on how they hold title. So unfortunately, our title rep could not come, but Sandra was able to provide this for us. So if you look, there is a community property, joint tenancy, tenancy in common, partnership, and trust. So, and then the main issue sometimes is survivalship. So let's say if two people take title of a property and one of them passes away, does their share goes to the other party, or does it go to their surviving, survivalship means, does it go to their family? So let's say it's not husband and wife situation, it's two friends that they bought a property as a partnership, right? So the question is, when one of them passes away, does it go to the other party, or does the share of that individual that passed away goes to his family? So these are some of the things that are crucial, that it's very important how you hold title. So the survivalship part of it is a
Can you
very,
change?
yeah, throughout time, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish Jerry was here to be able to answer a lot of your questions regarding title, but unfortunately he's not here. But probably I'm gonna ask Sandra to come and, maybe do a class or educate you a little bit more on those items. In the coming week, I'm gonna bring you additional paperwork from Sandra. A little bit more detail about things that related to, yeah. And last thing, when the buyer receives the prelim, the title report, on the first page, there's usually the name of the person that put together the prelim. And you can call that individual.
and say, hey, this is my case number, that's my reference number for this prelim
Prelim.
report. And I see this lien, I see this item, I see X, Y, and Z. Can you explain it to me? And they would explain it to you. The reason I mentioned this because there are going to be questions, and you're not an expert. So basically, what you can do if a buyer has an issue with a prelim, have them call your title rep, or even better more. Look at the prelim. There's a phone number of the person that actually put together that prelim, and call them and ask them specific question to your prelim. And ask them, hey, why there's this, why there's X, Y, Z, because there might be easement from the utility company, but there also could be easement from your neighbor. There could be an ingress egress. There could be a oil company that they are digging under your property, but you're not getting any benefit. And it's somebody else getting the benefit. So a lot of these things you're gonna find on your title. And then if you're not sure, just contact the number on your prelim, and they will be able to give you a better explanation.
The person that has oil rights to his property, right? The person who owns the land has oil rights.
What I'm trying to convey to you, the property owner is not always the one that collects the profit from the oil under their property.
But it's their property.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't go with the property. Sometimes people can sell their property and keep the oil right.
Sell the property and keep the oil right?
Yeah, usually that's something to see.
That's it, not here.
Yeah.
No, I've come across it,
Here,
yeah, and even in Beverly Hills. And I have families that they start fighting because one brother sold it to another and kept the oil right and didn't tell the brother. And when the other brother found out, got really pissed off. That
because you get a
actually,
check,
huh?
because you get a check.
Yeah, it's not much, but the concept was wrong. The brother got pissed off. So this is actually a real true story. It happened many.
Here's the like dipping down, like, right?
I know.
Every
the name
single
of the
time one of
trustee.
them dips down, someone gets paid.
So these are all, you know what, I would have Sandra go over.
Especially if you're just doing it.
That's what I'm saying.
That's good.
On the way to-
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
No, yeah, and a bunch of cars.
Thank you, John.
Bravo.